Compression. Compression or data compression is used to reduce the size of one or more files. When a file is compressed, it takes up less disk space than an uncompressed version and can be transferred to other systems more quickly. Therefore, compression is often used to save disk space and reduce the time needed to transfer files over the internet. Two primary types of data compression: file compression and media compression. File compression. File compression is used to reduce the file size of one or more files. When a file or a group of files is compressed, the resulting archive often takes up 50% to 90% less disk space than the original files. File compression. The goal is to remove redundant data in each file by replacing common patterns with similar variables. For example, words in a plain text document might get replaced with number or another type of short identifier. This identifier then references the original words that are saved in a key within a compressed file. For instance, the word computer may be replaced with the number 5, which takes up much less space than the word computer. The more times the word computer is found in the text document, the more effective the compression will be. File compression works well with text files. Binary files can also be compressed by locating repeated binary patterns, and compression algorithm can significantly reduce the size of binary files such as application and disk images. Media compression. Like file compression, the goal of media compression is to reduce file size and save disk space. However, the media compression algorithms are specific to certain types of media such as image, audio, and video files. Three types of media compression. JPEG compression, which is commonly used for digital photos, incorporate a lossy compression algorithms that average nearby colors and removes color variation that are imperceivable by the human eye. GIF compression reduces the color palette of an image to 256 colors or less, which provide an efficient way to represent each color within the image. PNG compression uses a lossless compression algorithm that filters the image data and predicts pixel colors based on others nearby pixel. While each of these algorithms work different ways, they can all be used to significantly reduce the file size of an uncompressed image. Lossy compression. Lossy file compression results in lost data and quality from original version. Lossy compression is typically associated with image files such as JPEGs, but can also be used for audio files like MP3s and AAC files. The lossiness of an image file may show up as jagged edges or pixelated areas in audio files. The lossiness may produce watery sound or reduce the dynamic range of the audio. Lossy compression removes data from the original file. The resulting file often takes up much less disk space than the original file. For example, a JPEG image may reduce an image file size by more than 80%. Little noticeable effects. Similarly, a compressed MP3 file may be one-tenth the size of the original audio file and may sound almost identical. Lossless compression. Lossless compression basically rewrites data of the original file in more efficient way. However, because no quality is lost, the resulting files are typically much larger than image and audio files compressed with lossy compression. For example, a file compressed using lossy compression may be one-tenth of the size of the original, while lossless compression is unlikely to produce a file smaller than half of the original size.
Good day, everyone. So, I'm here to report about archiving. So, what is archiving? Archiving is the process of combining multiple files and directories. It is also the process of combining multiple files into a single package called an archive. So, this archive can then be easily distributed to another machine, backed up as in backed up in a repository somewhere, or simply kept on your own machine as a way to organize and clean up your file system. And archiving also means that you take 10 files and combine them into one file with no difference in size. So if you start with 10 and 100 kilobyte files and archive them, the resulting single file is 1000 kilobyte. On the other hand, if you compress those 10 files, you might you might find that the resulting files range from only a few kilobytes to close to the original size of 100 kilobyte, depending on the depending on upon the original type. And also, it can be thought like putting some different files into one box. So if you have 5 files, each of a size of 10 kilobyte, archiving those will give you 5 times 5 equals to 50 kilobytes. So here's the most common programs for archiving files and directories. So first is tar. So tar is a Unix command representative tape archive. So it is used to combine or store multiple files. Next is zip. So zip is a common file format that's used to compress one or more files together into a single location, and it reduces the file size and makes it easier to transport or store. So next is, what is the purpose of archiving? So it improves compliance, saves time, and increases security. Document archiving is securely storing information, both digital and paper format, that you no longer use regularly. It's important because it stops you losing data. And archiving is used to collect multiple data files together into a single file for easier portability and storage, or simply to compress files to use less storage. So here are some archive storage options. So first is tape. Tape is an effective data storage archival format because of its low cost. However, the time it takes to access data stored on tape is slower than the other storage options. For that reason, it is most often used as a long-term archival location where data is unlikely to be accessed. So next is hard disk drives. It can be used as archive storage. However, power and cooling of hard disk storage makes this option costly. Next is cloud. Cloud is a favorable archival option because it can easily scale and removes the cost of hardware, power, and cooling. However, for large data centers with continuously growing archives, like ongoing cost of cloud storage may start to add up. Some major cloud providers offer cloud archiving platforms that offer slower performances for a lower cost. So last is object. Object storage is an effective archival storage option because it has the ability to store large amounts of metadata, which is essential to easily access data. And object storage is also low cost and can store large amount of data.
Good day, everyone. I am Trishami Bidal Perto, so I will report about archiving and compression. The distinctions are sometimes blurred in casual conversation. There is a significant difference between archiving files and compressing them. So, archiving is basically when you coalesce multiple files together, but you may also compress them at the same time. So compression, we're reducing the amount of data that is stored in the particular file so that either it will move more quickly across our communication channel or take up less space in our storage media. So these are the archive and compression formats. Zip, gzip, bzip2, and tar. So gzip was created as an open source replacement for Compress, an older Unix program. It can be found on almost every Unix-based system on the planet, including Linux and Mac OS X, but it is much less common on Windows. So if mag-send kag files sa Unix-based machine user, gzip is a good option. bzip2 command is a newcomer on the scene, designed to replace gzip. So bzip2 produces smaller file at the expense of speed. However, computers are now fast that most users won't notice much of a difference in times it takes gzip or bzip to compress a group of files. So compression is focused of zip, gzip, and bzip2, although zip also archives. So the tar command does only one thing, which is archive, and has done so for a long time. It is almost entirely found on Unix-based machine. You'll definitely come across tar file, also known as tarballs. So if you download source code, but almost every Linux user can expect to come across a tarball at some point. Zip archives and compresses files, making it deal for sending multiple files as email attachments, backing up, and saving disk space. So it is simple to use. So assume you want to send a TIFF file to someone via email because TIFF images are uncompressed. They can be quite large. By zipping, you should be able to make the email attachment a little smaller.
Security. So here are the key points: violations, standard security threats, program threats, user authentication, implementing security defenses, cryptography as a security tool, virus damage scenarios, and firewalling. So first, why we need security? To provide a protection system to computer system resources such as CPU, memory disk, software programs, and most importantly, data or information stored in the computer system. Violations. Here are the common types of violations. First is breach of confidentiality. Theft of private or confidential information, such as credit card numbers, trade secrets, patents, secret formulas, manufacturing procedures, medical information, financial information, and others. Next, we have breach of integrity, unauthorized modification of data, which may have a serious indirect consequences. For example, a popular game or other program source code could be modified to open up security holes on user systems before being released to the public. Next is breach of availability, unauthorized destruction of data, often just for the fun, causing havoc and for bragging rights. Vandalism of websites is a common form of this violation. The next is theft of service, unauthorized use of resources, such as theft of CPU cycles, installation of daemons running an unauthorized file server, or tapping into the target's telephone or networking services. Lastly, denial of service or DOS, preventing legitimate users from using the system, often by overloading and overwhelming the system with an excess of requests for service. One common attack is masquerading, in which the attacker pretends to be a trusted third party. A variation of this is the man in the middle, in which the attacker masquerades as both ends of the conversation to two targets. Next is replay attack. So there are four levels at which a system must be protected. Number one, physical. The easiest way to steal data is to pocket the backup tapes. Also, access root console will often give the user special privileges, such as rebooting the system as root from removable media. Next is human. There is some concern that the humans who are allowed access to a system be trustworthy and that they cannot be coerced into breaching security. However, more and more attacks today are made by via social engineering, which basically means fooling trustworthy people into accidentally breaching security. For example, phishing. Phishing involves an innocent looking email or website designed to fool people into revealing confidential information. Next is dumpster diving. Involves searching the trash or other location for passwords that are written down. Next is password cracking. Involves divining users' passwords either by watching them type in their passwords or knowing something about them like their pet's name or simply trying all words in common dictionaries. So next is operating system. The operating system must protect itself from security breaches such as runaway process or denial of service, memory access violations, stack overflow violations, the launching of programs with excessive privileges, and many others. Lastly, the network. As network communication become ever more important and pervasive in modern computing environments, it becomes ever more important to protect in this area of the system. Program threats. First is Trojan horse. Trojan horse came from a famous Greek mythology, the siege of the city tribe during the War of the Greeks, trying to enter into the city, which was not possible, so they planned a trick of presenting a Trojan horse to the Greeks by hiding themselves inside that horse. Second is trapdoor. As the word says, trap, it is a method of breaching security in a system. Specific user identifier or password that circumvents normal security procedures and could be included in a compiler. Logic bomb, a piece of often malicious code that is intentionally inserted into software. Stock or buffer overflow is a situation where we write a piece of information into a memory which of a certain length, but if you want to write something or do a buffer length, then the buffer overflow occurs. Viruses, code fragment embedded into a legitimate program and very specific to CPU architecture, operating system, and applications. Some of the forms of viruses includes number one, file. A file virus attaches itself to an executable file, causing it to run the virus code first and then jump to the restart of the original program. Next is boot. A boot virus occupies the boot sector and runs before the OS is loaded. Next is macro. These viruses exist as a macro or script that are run automatically by certain macro-capable programs such as MS Word or Excel. Source code viruses look for source code and infect it in order to spread. Polymorphic viruses change every time they spread. Next is encrypted viruses. Travel in encrypted form to escape detection. Stealth viruses try to avoid detection by modifying parts of the system that could be used to detect it. Next is tunneling viruses. Attempt to avoid detection by inserting themselves into the interrupt handling chain or into device drivers. Multipartite viruses attack multiple parts of the system such as files, boot sector, and memory. Lastly, armored viruses are coded to make them hard for antivirus researchers to decode and understand. System and network threats. First is worm is a process that uses the fork or spawn process to make copies of itself in order to wreak havoc on a system. For example, grappling hook and mainworm program. Next is port scanning. Is technically not an attack, but rather a search vulnerabilities to attack. Denial of service. Attacks do not attempt to actually access or damage systems, but merely to clog them up so badly that they cannot be used for any useful work. Next is cryptography as a secret tool. Within a given computer, the transmittal of messages is safe, reliable, and secure because the OS knows exactly where each one is coming from and where it is going. So the two big questions of security is trust and confidentiality. Trust is how can the system be sure that the messages received are really from the source that they say they are, and that can source be trusted? Confidentiality is how can one ensure that the messages one is sending are received only by the intended recipient? Cryptography can help with both of these problems through a system of secrets and keys. Keys are designed so that they cannot be divided from any public information and must be guarded carefully. User authentication. So, how can a human user prove their identity to a program? And there are different ways to prove authentication. Something user has, such as password, codes, hint, something that a user have, such as fingerprints, something that the user is facial pattern. Two types of authentication. First is external authentication. Verify the user, usually username or password combination. They may require you two passwords for identification. Next is internal authentication. Verify the process and don't allow one user to appear to be that of another user. Dealing with passwords. Passwords should be memorable. Passwords are mostly used authentication technique to identify a particular user knowing the hash value and hash function. It doesn't give any clue to the original password. Authentication using biometrics. Use basic body properties to provide identity. For example, fingerprints, voice, hand size, retina patterns, iris patterns, facial features. Next is potential problems. There are some potential problems. There are also some potential problems that we should consider while using biometrics. Duplicating measurement and stealing it from the owner. Implementing security defenses. First is security policy. A security policy should be well thought out, agreed upon, and contained in a living document that everyone adheres to and is updated as needed. Vulnerability assessment. Periodically examine the system to detect vulnerabilities. Therefore, scanning, check for bad passwords, look for SUID programs, unauthorized program in a system directories, incorrect permission bit set, program checksums or digital signatures which have changed, unexpected or hidden network daemons, new entries in startup scripts, shutdown scripts, con tables or other system scripts or configuration files, new unauthorized accounts. Next is intrusion detection. Attempts to detect attacks both successful and unsuccessful attempts. There are two major approaches to detecting problems. First is signature-based detection and anomaly detection. So virus protection is a modern antivirus programs are basically signature-based detection systems, which also have the ability, in some cases, of disinfecting the affected files and returning them back to their original condition. Lastly is adulting, accounting, and logging can also be used to detect anomalous behavior. Virus damage scenarios. Denial of service as long as virus runs, permanently damage hardware, target a competitor's computer, intra-corporate dirty tricks such as practical jokes and sabotage another corporate officer's files. Firewalling is a kind of security which limits the network access between trusted and untrusted hosts and can be tunneled or spoofed. Tunneling allows this allowed protocol to travel within allowed protocol, and firewalls typically based on host name of IP address which can be spoofed. The four types of firewalling. Personal firewall is a software layer on given host. Can monitor or limit traffic to and from the host. Application proxy firewall understand application protocol and can control them. XML firewall examine XML packers only and reject ill-formed packers. Similar firewalls exist for other specific protocols. System call firewall monitors all important system calls and apply rules to them.
Computer protection. Computer protection or security is the process of protecting your computer against unauthorized intrusions. These unauthorized intrusions could be anything from the installation of malicious software on your computer without your consent to hackers taking over your computer's control so that it can be used as a botnet, including every other security threat which falls between them. Once your PC security has been compromised, hackers can also take over your identity and use it to their advantage. Like for example, hackers can pose as you to carry out security attacks, can hide your actual location in case of high-profile attacks and use yours instead, and can also encrypt your computer's data or crash it altogether. Let's take a look at some of the basics of computer protection using which you can secure your computer successfully. First, install antivirus software. Not just any antivirus software, but one which can offer real-time protection. Because real-time protection is crucial if your PC is to be protected against today's security threats. Second, implement other security tools. Unfortunately, antivirus alone is not sufficient to keep security threats at bay. You need the whole package, anti-malware, firewall, and others, to combat today's sophisticated malware. Third, keep your computer updated. Ensure every software within your computer is properly patched up and up to date. This includes the operating system and the other third-party software which might be a part of it, because most of the security threats exploit your system security vulnerabilities, and keeping your system up to date can eliminate such threats. Fourth, use complex passwords. Another aspect, which is very important but quite often ignored, are strong and unguessable passwords. Each password you possess, not just your system password, to various accounts, you might be having pose a serious threat to your PC and your digital identity. Therefore, ensure you always implement complex passwords. Fifth, follow security best practices. Finally, don't forget to follow the security best practices like not clicking on suspicious mails, not downloading suspicious attachments, not visiting dangerous websites, etc. to keep your computer and digital identity safe. In other words, exercise caution while online. Your computer protection is something which cannot be taken lightly, especially considering the rapidly changing cybersecurity threat landscape, which seems to throw up new challenges almost every day. Therefore, equip your computer with necessary security tools.
Security and protection isn't enough because in our life there is Among Us. Let us begin.
There are three things that can hack your password, and one of them are breaches. Hashing your password on the website available on the internet. It may be unconvincing, but then it is true. Most of the breaches contain plain text password. The popular application already suffered major data breaches, and all of these breaches are already publicly available on the internet. Social engineering. This is literally giving your password to a unknown website that will give you a free service. Even you know how things works, they can still get your credentials through giving you a malware that can locate who you are. Man in the middle. This is a hacker would likely to to be a third party of your life, which the person would get your information for going to the specific website. These applications can get your information, but then the hackers too. They may seem friendly, but then they are already your surveillance camera.
So recap lang ta sa security and protection. We will be tackling about comparison of security and protection. So what is the difference between security and protection? Security is a method used in operating systems that handles the threats from outside of the system to maintain the proper functioning of the system, while protection is a method used in operating systems that manages threats within the system to maintain the proper functioning of the system. So, this constitutes the basic difference between protection and security. The main difference between protection and security is that protection focuses on internal threats of the system. It can occur within a company if someone exploits or gains access to a system, stealing data or causing system harm. And security, on the other hand, focuses on external threats to the system. So, what is these threats? Some methods is the ransomware that blocks access to your device until demands are met. For example, in the video, the downloaded executable file denies the access and files. Also, phishing attacks, the attacker sends links that are very attracted, then the victim takes the bait and will steal your credentials. That's why it's called phishing. So, security provides a mechanism to safeguard the system resources and user resources from external users. Furthermore, security involves mechanisms such as adding, deleting users, verifying whether a specific user is authorized, using anti-malware software, and etc. Protection provides a mechanism for controlling the access to programs, processes, and user resources. It involves mechanisms such as setting or changing protection information of a resource and checking whether that resource is accessible by a user. Conclusion: although usahay mahalaan sila og parehas, ayaw mo ka-confuse. Ang difference ra gyud nila is si security nag-focus lang sa external threats sa computer system, while si protection mo'y in charge sa internal threats.